there's a great sense of irony in what's just unfolded. See, there's a user on the R Music Discord which may or may not be online at the moment. Let me just go ahead and quickly check. All right, my mouse is broken. Currently appears to be offline. It's actually online. Okay, so he brought up to me the fact that he was not quite certain how to work VCV Rack, which is a modular software synth. I said to him, well, why don't I make a quick video trying to show, the basics of how it's done, and then I spent about an hour discovering that I did not actually know how to do a particular thing, which, despite the fact that I did so yesterday to perfection. So I'm not quite sure what I did wrong, but I appear to have worked it out now. So if it doesn't work again, well, you may laugh in my face. Now, let's quickly go over the basic building blocks of a modular synth, bearing in mind that I have already repeated all of this. Essentially, you can divide the modules that you're going to be using into three main categories, more or less. And bear in mind that I know basically nothing about modular synths, so if I say something horribly wrong, there you go. There are modules that make sound. These could be, for example, oscillators, obviously, or drum machines. There are modules that control other modules. These would be, for example, in the case of VCV Rack, it would be a MIDI module or an LFO or something. Although you can technically wire up any real module so that it controls another module, but and then there are modules that change the way a sound is sculpted. So let's go ahead and insert the most basic one when it comes to making sound. That would be an oscillator. In the modular world, an oscillator is called a VCO, which means voltage controlled oscillator. I'm just going to go ahead and bring in the basic VCO. There it is. There's an analog and a digital switch. There's a hard and a soft switch, which I don't really know what that means. I think it's to do with hard sync and soft sync. And then we have a frequency knob, a fine frequency knob, a pulse width knob, pulse width modulation control voltage, and frequency modulation control voltage. So let's go ahead and just quickly observe what all these things do. But first we're going to need to be able to actually hear this thing. We will need to bring in something called a VCA. That means voltage controlled amplifier. Let's see what this one looks like. Looks pretty good. I like this one. Yes, I like it. And then I'm going to go ahead and bring in what is called an audio module, which is pretty obvious. It's just a thing that allows us to hear. And just for safety reasons, in case I end up needing it, I'm going to bring in what is called a unity mixer, which allows me to mix multiple tracks into one output. Now, I should explain, the usually grayed out or blacked out jacks are the outputs, whereas the ones that don't have any background coloring to them, like these ones, are the inputs. So I'm going to go ahead and bring in a sine output into the input on my VCA. I'm going to bring it down into the unity mixer, and then I'm going to, whoops, that's an input, my bad. I'm going to bring it down into the unity mixer, and then I'm going to bring this down here and down here once again. I'm not hearing anything. Why is that? I need to select direct sound and then my speakers. There we go. And I'm going to lower that. Cool. So we're frequencing our voltage controlled oscillator. We've taught it. We've given it a lesson. We've explained to it how to go to the amplifier. We've explained the amplifier how to go to the Unity mixer. We've explained to the mixer how to go over to our headphones or speakers. Let's go ahead and now bring in two little things. We're going to bring in an oscilloscope. Which is going to do the following thing if I know how to actually use it. I see it's set in 3 different ways, right? So there's our little sine wave. We can change it from digital to analog, which doesn't look like much at the moment, but it sounds like something. Oh, these are just different channels, I see. I'll just set these, and right-clicking on everything to set it to basic. I don't really want it to be down there. Okay, so there's our waveform, and if I were to now bring in, for example, a triangle or a saw waveform or a square waveform, you'd be able to see what that looks like. This isn't actually quite as good as the other scope thing. Scope G1, let's see what this one looks like. Let's bring in the sine wave. No, I don't like that, it's kind of small. Full scope. This is a very minimal one. Fortunately, this does also come with its own basic scope. Alright, it's quite small, but it'll do. And once again, if I were to now bring in a triangle or a saw or a square, you can see they're not quite perfect. As it turns out, actually the other one was giving me exactly the perfect shapes. So let's go ahead and use this one because it's quite a bit bigger. So let me just raise this up here. Let's just listen to all the different waves as well as see them. So a triangle, it sounds a little bit more harmonic, not harmonious because there is no harmony as such going on, but there's more harmonic presence, and we'll see why later as well. I'm just trying to think if there's any way of is there any way of actually doing this in reverse? Is there a way of putting one input and having several of the same outputs? Yes, there is. I'm gonna go ahead and do something clever here. I'm gonna bring in both this envelope oscilloscope and a spectrum analyzer. These show different properties of our sound. I'm just gonna go ahead and bring both of these in. So as you can see now, this looks a lot quieter because I'm doing that. Alright. And this allows me to do this, which is quite cool. I can alter both of them. So this is showing the frequency, how that's looking. Let me just put this down here so the cable isn't in the way. There we go. Well, this is showing the harmonic presence of our waveforms. You may notice that these don't quite look right. This doesn't really look like a square shape, does it? Well, if we change it from analog to digital, it starts to look a lot nicer, or at least a lot more like what we want. Likewise, a saw wave starts to look a lot more like the real thing. And you may notice down here as well in the spectrum analyzer. Is my cursor showing up? Yep. In the spectrum analyzer, you may notice down here, I'm getting a little bit more top end. This is showing the harmonic presence. So if I have peaks up here, that means I have sound as high up as, 10k hertz and anything like that. Triangle, well, That looks like a perfect triangle. That doesn't quite look perfect. Whereas a sine wave, that's almost perfect. All I'm getting is just these little peaks up here if it's analog, whereas with digital I'm just getting the one perfect clean sound. Let's see just what this thing can do. So you can see down on the spectrum analyzer it's going left and right, whereas in here it's shrinking. What if I were to now bring in a square shape, for example? The square has an interesting property. It has what is called the pulse width, which you may be able to see quite nicely if I do this. So that's our basic oscillator, and that's what it's capable of doing. So that's all well and good, but we're not really playing anything at the moment, are we? This isn't really music, it's just a drone. And that's fine, you know, there's a lot of knob turning music out there. Maybe we would like to do a little bit more. So I'm now going to bring in a DAW, a DAW. Rewire slave mode. I don't know about that one. Why'd I have a keygen on that one? I just downloaded it, by the way. It's not that I've done anything illegal. So I'm gonna open up this program here, which is called Reaper. It's a digital audio workstation, as you can see. It says so. And I'm going to bring in, this is the thing that was giving me trouble earlier. I'm gonna first of all add a new MIDI item, and on the FX I'm gonna select a little something called VCV Bridge. And as you can see, we have 16. We should have anyway 16. Only 15? Because it goes from 0 to 15. Okay. We have 16 adjustable CC. These are just controllable parameters. You can just assign these parameters. I'm not quite sure how they work, to be fair. And then we have 16 ports. So I'm going to go ahead and bring in a MIDI module up here. And this is going to kind of get in the way of... I wish there were a way of doing this without having the cables getting in the way of each other. That's annoying. Maybe if I were to do like that. Right. We'll content ourselves with that. Okay. And now on the MIDI thing, I'm gonna go ahead and bring in the bridge option and select port 1. So these two should now be talking to one another. And up here where it says control voltage, I'm gonna put it into the volt over octave. Now, this may not sound like much at the moment, but if I now go into this MIDI thing on Reaper, we should hear we're now controlling VCV rack using Reaper. And let's what can we what sort of a melody can we make it play? Let's just give it a basic arpeggio. These are 30-second note. That's a bit fast for my liking. Let's do a C minor arpeggio. Why don't we? So there's the. Alright, that's an arpeggio, but you're noticing that something isn't quite right here. Why is a note still ringing out? Well, we don't like that. What if we had something like this, for example? I'm putting random notes down, by the way. I don't know anything about composing or anything, but first of all, it's skipping a note, which is quite odd, but it's also not accounting for the empty spaces. We need to gate this in some way. I'm going to select the gate and put it right here on the VCA. And it's completely gone because it's only going to flash when we actually give it an input. So let's hear what that sounds like. I don't want to fade that out. I just want to shrink it. Thank you very much. Let's throw in a loop. Play as though it is looping, please. Toggle repeat. That isn't quite right, is it? There's an annoying little click. That's because it's cutting out sort of quite suddenly. It's not a case of analog versus digital. It's just because we're cutting the frequency completely off. I should point out, by the way, the importance of the harmonic presence in other waveforms by doing a little something like, for example, right down here. I don't know, let's just have again a descending arpeggio of some description. I'm just putting random notes down, by the way. Again, I'm not a musician or anything, but you can't really discern what's going on there. Let's try putting in a triangle. Try putting in a saw. It sounds bad because I composed, a poor piece of music, but you can tell that it's much clearer what's ringing out. You can really hear it a lot better. That's because it has more harmonic presence. It's low in pitch, but it's high in harmonic content. But we don't like that click, do we? should find a nice riff or something to compose. What's the BPM at the moment? 120. It's always 120. Let's throw in a triplet, 8th notes. I think it's like an octave lower. My scroll wheel is unfortunately quite broken at the moment, so can't really be making that work. There we go, this should be a nice little riff. There we go, that's, it's not quite complete, is it? Let me just go ahead and just finish it, finish the job. I don't remember how this goes. Shit. Something like this, I think. No. This. Okay, that's the third, that's the fourth, that's the fifth. Okay. Maybe like this. Sounds fine. Okay. So that's our little riff, and VCV Rack is playing that very faithfully, but it's not very good, is it? I'm hearing that click. I want to get rid of that. How do I do that? Well, I'm gonna need what's called an ADSR, or an envelope generator. Let's bring in a basic ADSR, and we're gonna go ahead and get rid of this gate and replace it with this guy. What did I do wrong? Why is it not working now? Oh, there we go. I needed to gate that thing so it actually knew when to start opening and closing. So I now have an attack, decay, sustain, release. Now what you'll notice is that when there's a long string of notes with no gaps between them, it's not quite working as I would like it to, and to be fair, I don't know how to get that fixed. And now even if I have a really low attack, the wave is responding a lot more nicely. Now, a lot of people will just content themselves with that, but that's not quite... It's not quite doing it for me. We need to sculpt the sound a little bit more. Let's go ahead and bring in a filter. Let's bring in a completely random one, shall we? Let's bring in a dual with shaper. Oh, fuck that. Okay, let's bring in a dual multimode filter. Alright, I'm into that. We're gonna bring this input A, output A. Sir, what did I do wrong? Tell you what, let's not bring in that filter, let's bring in a different one, why don't we? Let's bring in just the basic VCF filter. Saw wave input, low pass filter or high pass filter, that's what LPF and HPF stands for. I'm going to bring in a low pass. Okay, that's just basically turn this into a pretend sine. And yeah, you will notice that if I filter out, especially, you'll notice it a lot better on digital because it's a lot spikier. You'll notice it how it starts to round off till it's just a sine wave. That's because any sound, any harmonic sound, harmonically rich sound can just be broken down into sine waves at different frequencies. Let's drive it a bit till it becomes a square. No, let's not do that. The frequency controls how much of the high end we let through, or indeed the low end if we want to do this. This, oh, whoops, this little res thing. What? Why is it not working again all of a sudden? Oh, there you go. This little res thing controls something called the resonance, which is a peak that happens right before the cutoff frequency, which is the point at which the filter starts to not let things pass. See that? Right as it dips, we're creating a little peak before the valley. See what it's doing to that wave? Drive it a little bit more and it starts to lose that annoying top end fizz, at least for a little bit. Maybe a bit more. This filter is quite weak in the resonance. I would like to find a better one. PG VCF. This looks very, very basic. So let's see what this sounds like. This is also a bandpass mode, which is sort of a... It's like effectively, if you can imagine having like a line be your sound. Low pass lets the low things pass, high pass lets the high things pass, and band lets the middle things pass. And by altering the frequency, you're basically altering where that band is. As you can see, the peak, there's a little bump that goes through that. Alright, that's pretty cool. Let's go ahead and bring in a square, why don't we? So there's our little basic sound. We have an ADSR, we have a filter, we have all sorts of weird things. Why don't I just go ahead, throw in another VCO. I would like this one to be a slightly different one. This looks crazy. Let's try a different one entirely. Car plus strong poly high frequency oscillator. Let's bring in an LFO first off, why don't we? Cycloid. I can't really tell what that's doing. Alright, it wasn't doing anything because I had the control voltage knob down to 0, so I'm gonna bring in a velocity on the frequency modulation. No, I'm going to bring it in on the frequency modulation on the filter. I'm going to actually replace this with a different one. So we're going to go quiet for a brief period. And I'm going to stick in a, how about diode ladder filter? What's this going to look like? Alright, the output, I'm gonna have, so you said a square wave, output goes to here. It's quite quiet for some reason. I suppose. Maybe it doesn't work well. Maybe that wasn't actually a resonance. It was something else that I was fiddling with. TVCF. Peak A. Alright. Let's try this one. In A. Out. Well, you can kind of adjust. Okay, that's controlling the two different things, I suppose. As you can see, I can toggle between linear and exponential. I must admit, I don't quite know what that does. I'm told that with ADSR, you should like it to be linear rather than exponential. Ping appears to be what we know to be resonance. This is a ping output, sorry, a ping input. So here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna bring in the ping I think that sounds quite odd, and you would be right, because this thing doesn't quite work like I would like it to. Essentially, what I'm doing with that velocity thing is I'm trying to link the way the resonance is opening up to the velocity of the note, namely how hard the note is being pressed down. Now, all the notes that I put down in Reaper are consistent in their size, so that isn't actually doing that much at the moment. MS250 filter, peak gain, this looks fine. Gain mode, I'm not sure what that's about. Peak CV. That's, as you can see, that's altering how much the peak is being controlled, but there's no variance there because all the notes are being played the same volume. So why don't we go ahead? Why don't we go ahead and just turn a few of these bad boys up? And conversely, turn a few of them down. We'll see as we hit these notes. We're actually getting a bit of control over where peak sounds like. Why don't we go ahead and control the frequency by the ADSR? I think this is pretty cool. Why don't I just go ahead now and bring in another VCO. Aux cart, what is this like? It's a very basic VCO. Even VCO. I'm gonna bring in square wave to the hard sync. This out, but first I'm gonna actually mute this entirely just so I know what the fuck this is gonna sound like. CV over to the volt per octave, ADSR over to that, bring this out to here. Quite working the way I would have liked it to, I must admit. I don't quite remember how to sync the oscillators together, but I'm just messing around a little bit. Let's just bring in the same VCO just so I have a bed radio, but sync inputs, that must mean it must want an output. Okay, I just don't remember how to do that, I suppose, but well, there you go. I guess that's as far as my knowledge of VCB Rack goes, but it's enough to play. It's enough to make it play the riff to Sleep to Dragonaut by Sleep 1,000 times over. So there you go. I hope this somehow helped you to learn a thing or two about VCB Rack. If it didn't, then there you go.